everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Mystical Munchies featuring the World of Warcraft New Flavors of Azeroth cookbook. The salty dog crackers were pretty good last week, so now we're into the side, Airy Ciabatta. First up, let's tell the story. This one's from Bastion, which is in the Shadowlands, I believe. Actually, yeah, Shadowlands. I never played in Shadowlands, but let's tell the story. You might think you don't need a recipe for more bread, but what happens if you find yourself far from civilization with a hankering for those light, airy dough pockets? Perfect for sandwiches or soup, this is definitely a bread that's worth mastering, so you're never without its light goodness. Well, we'll find out if it's a recipe I can master with that light goodness to it, or if it's going to flop. The ingredients for it are waiting for us at the table, so let's move in that direction. You'll probably hear the oven chirping in the background. Of course, you guys know I'm working on some of my Saturday prep while I do this. But in order to make this recipe, we need 1.5 cups of warm water, which I'll get when I'm ready for it. A teaspoon each of granulated sugar and coarse salt. I'm using table salt. 1.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast. 3 cups of all-purpose flour, divided, and we need more for dusting. And 2 teaspoons of olive oil. That was my light falling, by the way. 2 teaspoons of olive oil, plus more for the bowl. Anyway, let's move into the kitchen and start putting this recipe together. You might see the hand mixer in shot as well. We don't need it right away, but we will need it before too long, so that's why it's already prepped and in shot. Anyway, we're starting off with what's supposed to be a medium mixing bowl, except I'm using one of my large bowls. So we'll start off by combining the water, the sugar, which that is 1 tablespoon of that, and our 1.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast, which all I've got is my 1/2 teaspoon, but I can multiply fractions and use this 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. And now we want to mix that up and let that sit for a few minutes until the yeast is dissolved. So let me give that, I don't know why I'm putting the yeast back up when it needs to go back in the fridge. So let's give this a quick stir. Okay. So now we're going to let that sit until the yeast, we're going to let that sit for a few minutes until the yeast dissolves. Shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, I would think, but I will keep an eye on it. So we'll come back to this once the yeast is dissolved. I've been keeping an eye on the water and the yeast while the camera's been off, and it looks like it's dissolved. So we're going to move on to the next part of the recipe. So now we're going to add in the salt and the 2 cups of flour, and 2 cups of the flour. So I've got the salt right here. 1 teaspoon of the salt. That's a little bit more than a teaspoon, but we can probably work with it. And I don't need the teaspoon again, do I? No. Because I've got the 2 teaspoon ready to go for the salt. And we want 2 cups of the flour. Let's pull this out over top of here. So we've got 1 and 2 cups of the flour. And then this is where the hand mixer comes into play. So we're going to beat it with a hand mixer on medium for about 5 minutes until the texture is noticeably changed to a gloopier one. So I've got my timer all set to go here, so speed of 3. And here's your 5-second warning before I turn on the mixer that it might be a little bit loud. You want that to be on start. One thing is for sure in that mix-up. It did not take long for the gloop to become strong with this recipe. So now I'll eject. Whoa, not that button. Eject. There we go. Trying to eject the beater bars so those can go over toward the dishes. And I'll give my hands a quick wash. Ow! Holding the beater bar holding the mixer that long actually kind of hurt my hand a little bit, but I think I'll be alright. Anyway, the next thing we want to do here is now we want to stir in the remaining 1 cup of flour. There we are. So now we'll pour in the remaining cup of flour. Actually, I'm going to leave the flour down here because we need more of that later. Oop, jarred the camera. Okay, I'm going to get a spatula down so I can try to scrape a little bit more of the batter in. Okay, I think that's probably as much as I'm going to get there. Trying to get that little bit down. There we are. Okay. Give my hands a quick wash. And then we're going to need to bring another bowl momentarily in shot. I'm just cleaning my hands so I can do that. And now we'll bring the bowl, then bring the other bowl in shot. The next thing we want to do is we want to oil a clean bowl up. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take some of my olive oil. I'm going to pour some into this bowl. And then I'm going to use a paper towel to spread it all around. Easy does it. Okay. So that's our bowl, that's our oiled bowl ready to go. That can hit the bin. And what we want to do now is we're going to upend the dough into it, and we're going to drizzle some more oil on top. So now we're going to take our dough and pour that in. Okay. Then I'm going to pour a little more oil on top. Whoop. Okay. Now I'm going to grab some plastic wrap so I can cover it. Without sending the roll flying. Looks like I'm going to have to cover this crosswise. So we'll start off with the piece of plastic wrap there. And we'll take another piece along this side as well. Then the recipe specifies set it aside somewhere warm. Fortunately, my apartment is pretty warm, so I'm just going to put this on the table, and we'll let it rise for about an hour. So let's set a kitchen timer, and we'll let that rise for an hour. The timer for the dough rising just went off, so now I've got the oven preheating back up to 400 degrees again. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to take our baking sheet and we're going to line it with parchment paper. Like that. I just wanted to make sure the parchment paper was going to cover the whole sheet. So now we'll put that in about like so. I'll use a few clips to help me hold to hopefully help the parchment paper adhere to the baking sheet. Should be a couple more clips here. Okay. That's not going to hold. That one will. So we'll get that out of shot for the time being. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and dust a clean work surface with flour. This is going to be our work surface. So now we're going to dust it with flour. Just spread that out. Okay. That should be good for the flour, so I'm going to give my hands a quick wash. Okay, now we want to upend the dough onto it, and I'm going to try to handle it as little as possible to keep the dough light and airy. So there's our look at the dough before I upend it onto the work surface. Perfect. All right, I'll get that out of my way. And actually, I think at this point the flour can go up now. And now what I want to do here is I want to form a loose rectangular shape about 4 inches wide and 12 inches long. Before I do that, though, I'm going to get a knife out, a sharper knife out. This one should do, because I'm going to be ready for the next step when I get there. Alright, so actually, I think that mostly looks pretty good there. So yeah, I think it doesn't take too much there to get it to where I want it to be. Next thing I want to do here, once I get my hands clean, is we're going to use a sharp knife or a bench scraper, which I've got the knife there. We're going to cut the dough straight down the middle and then to about 8 equal pieces. So we'll take our knife. This probably isn't a sharp enough knife. Well, takes a little bit of browbeating, but we got it separated out here. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to cut that into our aforementioned 8 equal pieces. These aren't going to be very equal pieces, but we'll do what we can. I am having to handle it a little bit just to help me separate these pieces out. There we are. So there's 4 separated. We'll come up here as well. This knife actually is working pretty well for what I'm trying to do with it. 6. Okay. And one more to separate. There we go. Okay. There's a lot that's going to happen here, but I'm not going to show it all on camera. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to transfer these pieces to the baking sheet. So I'll grab another spatula for that. Actually, yeah, this will work. So we're going to transfer these to the baking sheet. Six, 7, and 8. There we are. Whoops. Okay, now I probably don't need the clips anymore now that I've actually got the ciabatta, now that I've actually got the bread on here. So here's what's all going to happen with these now that I've got them on the baking sheet. We're going to let them rise for about another 15 minutes. Then we're going to bake them for 25 to 30 minutes until they're a nice light golden color. So I'll set the timer for 15 minutes first to let them rise. Then we're going to let them bake again for about 25 to 30 minutes. So we'll come back when they come out of the oven. Here's our first look at the loaves of the ciabatta, as they've also had a little bit of time to cool while I was finishing up dishes. Now we're going to plate one of these, and I'll meet you guys over at my desk for the taste test. I've got one of the loaves of the ciabatta right here. They actually came out very small. I was expecting mini loaves, so not all that surprised. But let's give it a taste and see what I think. One of my observations already is I probably need to cut it, but it's definitely very hard on the crust. But let's give it a taste and see what I think. If you want to be able to use it for sandwiches, you probably don't want to split it into the 8 pieces that we did in the recipe, but otherwise, it actually turned out to be very good. I'm actually happy with how this turned out in terms of something you'd be able to use for sandwiches, again, with the caveat of remembering not to cut it up into the 8 pieces. So yeah, maybe I'll make this again with that, but that's another episode of Mystical Munchies in the books. Next week will be on the entree, Nomergon Nuggets. Videos are going to go up a little bit out of order for today. So by the time this video goes up, our game of Inside the Crease Hockey will most likely already have gone live on the channel. So tomorrow morning, we'll be going back to the Skies Over World War II Europe as we play Skies Above Britain by GMT Games. I am going to use a new set of sequence cards that hopefully should make the game flow a bit better. We'll see if I like that or if it's going to be a game that moves out of my collection. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have another stream of Stratomatic Hockey as I'm continuing to scrape off rust on my hockey seasons. And Monday, we'll be continuing Metal Gear Mondays as we play Metal Gear Solid, the board game. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.